In a previous episode, we took a closer look at some issues the localizations had with groups of characters that were part of a theme, but today I wanted to focus on a different type of naming issue, where names are simply translated incorrectly either through ignorance or just because they could. Since Japanese writing is phonetic, there's always a bit of interpretation going on, especially with things like names, but irregardless of how you want to interpret the names into English, for these examples we either know what they're supposed to be or the Japanese is very different. So, without further ado, let's get started. Mazus is a powerful mage in Suikoden 2 and is the rival of Crowley from the first game. In English, his name is basically gibberish. His name is actually Mathers, and he's named after real-life mystic Samuel MacGregor Mathers, just like Crowley is named after Aleister Crowley. As for how he became Mazus in the localization, it's anyone's guess, really. Annallee is a singer from Suikoden 2, but her name is actually spelled Annallee. Annallee is a common name in Scandinavia, but not so much in the English-speaking parts of the world. We know what her name is supposed to be for two reasons. The first being that Miki Higashino, the composer of Suikoden 1 and 2, tweeted that she helped design the character and that she named her after Annallee Drecker, singer in the Norwegian band Bel Canto. We also know it's her name since she has a singing voice that was provided by Yumiko Takahashi, and she's listed in the credits as Annallee. However, when the localizers were faced with irrefutable evidence that they got it wrong, they decided to change the credits instead, losing the reference. Though the localizers of the remaster couldn't be bothered to go that far to hide the error, so she's listed under her actual name in those credits. Nicolas is a member of Duke's mercenary group in Suikoden 3, and doesn't have a large part to play in the game, but interestingly in Japanese his name is actually Nicol. For some reason the localizer decided to add AS to his name. Possibly they felt it sounded too feminine, despite Nicol being an actual name that is gender neutral, especially spelled this way. And if you want a Gundam reference, the Japanese spelling is the same as Nicola Marfi from Gundam Seed. Jacques is the newest member of Ghetto's mercenary group, but in Japanese his name is actually Jacques. The localizer didn't think that was fancy enough, so they gave it a French flair instead. Unfortunately, there's a problem with doing that. Except for Ghetto, all members of the 12th unit use aliases based on the special cards of a card deck: Joker, Ace, Queen, and Jack. Currently, there's not a king, but if Ayla ever becomes a full member of the group, we can probably guess what her name will be. Renaming Jack to Jacques breaks the theme the developers were going for. As an aside, the only member whose real name we know is Joker, who is actually called Wang, and originally appeared in Suikoden Volume 2. Roland is another character from Suikoden 3 that had his name lengthened in English, as there is no D at the end of his name in Japanese. In the original game it reads more like Laurent or Roland, depending on how you Romanize it. While some people have suggested that this is because his name is supposed to be pronounced in the French way with the D being silent, personally I find that unlikely, as the only elves we've seen up to this point have been Sylvina, Kirkus, Stallion, Ruby, and Ney, so Roland stands out like a sore thumb in that group, at least to me, and Lauren or Roland seem more like elvish names. And just to keep the Gundam references going, this is the same way Roland Seahack from Turn a Gundam is spelled in Japanese. Going back to strange character names for a bit, Fubar is the griffin companion of Hugo, and in Japanese his name is Hoover. But because the sounds of Hu and Fu are represented by the same kana in Japanese, it looks like Fuba if transliterated. And if you weren't aware, in English, Fubar is an acronym for effed up beyond all recognition. Considering the added quote-unquote humor of the rest of the game, I find it difficult to believe this wasn't intentional by the localizer, who probably just wanted to see how much they could get past Konami at the time. Mina is a dancer from the original Suikoden who shares her name with Lada's pet cat, who's also called Mina, in the localization. In the Japanese version, though, the names are slightly different as the dancer girl's name has a long I sound in her name. While the difference is almost indiscernible when spoken, it is a fact that they should be spelled differently. There are two characters in the localized series called Hugo. The first is the librarian in the original game, and the second is one of the protagonists in the third game. While the difference once again is just slightly different phonetics, there is no H sound in the librarian's name in Japanese, and his name is more like Hugo. There are two playable characters called Sarah in the Suikoden series, one in the first game and one in the third. Problem is, neither is really called that. Sarah in the first game is pronounced Sila, and for the obligatory Gundam reference, has the same name as Sayla Mass in the original Mobile Suit Gundam. The Sarah in Suikoden 3 is actually spelled S-E-R-A in Japanese. But however you want to interpret the names into English, the Japanese text makes it clear that these two characters are not supposed to have the exact same names. And to close us out, I'll quickly go over some names we've already covered in previous videos, so I won't repeat the whole thing here, but I'll include them for completion's sake. Jillia Blight from Suikoden 2 is another case of additional letters being added to the localization, as she's actually called Jill in Japanese. And in Suikoden 5, Subala is actually called Subaru, and also from 5, Marina is called Marino in Japanese. Unfortunately, the vast majority of these names are deliberate changes by the localizers, and as we saw with Annallee, that can be a problem if the developers picked the names for a specific reason. And at least the localizer of the original Suikoden 2 is on record saying he likes to change names he finds boring, which at least I find incredibly disrespectful to whomever gave them that name, and should probably be avoided. Mistakes will happen. In cases like Victor, for instance, it's impossible to tell from the Japanese text alone if it's supposed to be spelled with a K or a C since it's phonetically the same. But there's a difference between accidentally picking the wrong spelling and deliberately changing it to something else.